Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's show on AM 1320 and streaming live at WFHR.com. We also welcome our buddy Jesse from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. The reason he's here, Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink is here for the entire hour, and we'll be taking your phone calls. And with that, we welcome the Mayor of Wisconsin Rapids, Zach Vruwink. Good morning.
Good morning, Carl, and good morning to our listeners.
And we should say congratulations, Your Honor. He got a buck.
I got a buck, just a small buck. Venison nonetheless.
I couldn't resist.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
That means less time spent in the woods here on out, so that's a good thing.
Okay, well, where did you get it?
Out in Pittsville area, so
Okay.
north of Pittsville.
Okay, well, congratulations.
Yeah,
I know some folks are still looking.
Yes, well, and maybe they'll get lucky.
Well, it looks like the DNR's initial forecast or report says it's been a better hunt than last year. And as a driver, I want to thank all you hunters.
Yeah, right, yes. Keep our car insurance down.
That's right. That's right. Last night, the annual budget meeting for the city, and why don't we get right into it? Why don't you give us some of the highlights of the budget? What everybody wants to know is what they're going to be paying.
Yeah, right, in taxes. That's the big question. Well, as we seek with every budget year, we always want to maintain the level of service that we've had in previous years, and residents have voiced continuously that they want to see the same level of service, if not improvements, where possible. One such improvement that we're going to be launching, we talked about previously, and Joe Terry will be joining me for the second half of the show this morning, is automated garbage collection. And so we'll talk about that more later, but that was a new service or an enhanced service that we're launching in our 2019 budget. Other projects that were committed through the budget, I acknowledged in my transmittal letter, the city needs to continue to invest and pursue a path that of investments that improve the quality of life, not only for residents that live here, but also prospective residents, as we're in the pursuit all the time to attract residents to seek employment opportunities for the number of vacancies that are in the community at any given time. And that also goes to a threat of retention of residents, right? If we don't have the amenities that residents and young families in particular, working professionals, want in a city, they're very mobile and portable these days. And folks can, especially if they rent before they buy a home, they're less attached. And so we need to do our best in every budget cycle, not only to hold the line on expenditures and keep taxes low, but also to invest where it makes sense. And this budget certainly does that. And I'm proud the council passed it last night on a vote of 5-3. With Blazer, Kubishek, and Graff voting in the negative. But the other folks, everybody saw the bigger picture, I believe, as to what the budget sought. There were at least 6 meetings over the course of 6 weeks, public meetings where people sometimes showed up from the public, but certainly council members were working through the budget through a very extensive public meeting series on the budget this year. And so there was a lot of scrutiny and discussion about various items within the budget. And some of those initiatives throughout the budget, one of which we just talked about with automated garbage collection, other areas worth mentioning would be the Riverfront Phase 2. And as some background and context for folks, the city received 2 grants from the DNR, the state DNR, the Knowles-Nelson Stewardship Program, which we understand may be history come 2 years from now if the state doesn't re-up the program. So we were very successful in receiving over $1.2 million in investment in our riverfront. And Phase 1 is nearly complete. I'd say 95% complete in that there's a lot of furnishings that need to get installed along the riverbank. Benches, the fitness park stations that were fundraised for privately through a leadership group, as well as some of the picnic tables under the shade structure in Demetz Park in particular. So Phase 2 basically includes the start of Veterans Park to the south, up to the terminus or the end of Mead Rapids View Park to the north. So those are the 2 parks, the Clock and Bell Tower and the Veterans Park that everyone's familiar with. Some of the features of that project include stage, a small performance stage. Right now, community groups that perform in Veterans Park on days where there might be kind of wet grass there, they lay 4x8 sheets of plywood down, and we know that that's not probably the best or the ideal case. So we're going to put in a small performance stage in Veterans Park, as well as some additional seating. Many residents that attend Lunch by the River have told me over and over and over again, we don't have enough seating for people in Veterans Park for events such as Lunch by the River or other community events that happen there. So those are kind of two improvements in Veterans Park, as well as a Riverview balcony, a balcony that will extend over the river wall. That will be great. We hear from a lot of community members, why can't we have open container in our parks? And so this opportunity will allow us to explore open container and have an event space that actually could be reserved in Veterans Park. And then there's some sidewalk repair and maintenance, as well as river wall repair and maintenance in that area. That river wall is 100 years old. We've said that before about some of the other downriver walls, the shorter river walls. And so this project will make due on repair and maintenance as well as a new railing. If people go to Mead Rapids View Park, which is near the clock tower, you can push the railing over the river wall. It's no longer attached. It's not safe. Fortunately, that park gets less public utilization, but we realize after you add some attractions and amenities to the park, it's probably going to be more traffic by residents. So we have to address some of the maintenance and river wall and river wall railing concerns as well. So all of that will get wrapped up into Phase 2 next year, and so we'll use $625,000 that we received from the state to apply our match to do the improvements in those two parks.
Okay, and when would that work be done?
Well, we haven't let the project, meaning we haven't put it out to bid. We will, when we do, we'll prescribe a schedule in there, knowing that 4th of July is one of our most prized riverfront activities, and we're going to need to be cognizant around that event, and to the extent we can schedule work maybe to happen after that event so we're not tearing it up. Another capital project that will happen in the downtown area is East Grand Avenue. So there's going to be a confluence of activities on both sides of the river next year in terms of construction activities. So East Grand Avenue will get reconstructed from the bridge all the way to 8th Street. It's a very, very large project. So that project, that street will be out of commission in phases over the course of the next calendar year. But nonetheless, the pavement, is over 40, maybe 50 years old. In some cases, 60 years old. The utilities underground are that old or older. So it's a great project because we were able to receive, at least for the construction portion, 80% of the money from the state. It's an 80-20 project, so 20% of the project will be funded locally.
Okay. What about the look of that part of Grand Avenue?
It was actually an item discussed last night. The city passes plans and long-range plans, and that's just for good planning purposes, right? So before my time, the city council and the mayor at the time adopted a waterfront plan, and that really called for a number of things in our downtown area. The look, as you ask, so streetscape, pedestrian signage. It also called for design standards of new construction. So we've got a number of parcels now that are vacant and ready for reconstruction or new construction, new development. That plan set forth some design standards and called for a number of other recommendations, one of which is streetscape. And so it came up last night, how much is the city spending in streetscape along that corridor? And I would say that when we did West Grand Avenue, while we did the basic street infrastructure, we didn't do anything else. And so residents have said, where's the bike parking? Where are the benches? Where are the shade with the street trees that often come along with downtown corridor projects? And I'm pleased to say that we're going to get it right with East Grand Avenue. We're going to have benches, we're going to have bike parking, we're going to have some planting locations, so that way if you, from a quality of life and a pedestrian walkability standpoint, it'll be a nice corridor to spend time. And we know that when people spend time, businesses are more apt to be successful because folks are spending time and not just passing through in a car. And so we're very excited about that. We'll also have bike lanes on the East Grand corridor. Major reconstruction project, as I said, but the design elements were very important. And I think when you look at the overall total project cost, which is well over $1 million, nearly $2 million for that project, $100,000 in streetscape is just the icing on the cake, right? It's what you need to do to tell the public that we've done it right. We've finished the job, and not something that we're going to have to come back to and fund later when the project is over, as we're seeing with the short downtown segment of West Grand Avenue. When you think about having youth with the Boys and Girls Club or the YMCA or families in most of that corridor, if you're going to spend time downtown, grab a cup of coffee, and there's not a place to sit outside, you're not going to spend time downtown, right? It's very simple, and so that's our intent with East Grand Avenue, is we add these amenities to the project in order to grow business and to keep people active and outdoors for a period of time.
Now, how are we going to be helping the businesses that are going to be impacted during that major construction?
One of the big ways is through the Chamber of Commerce outreach, early outreach now that the project has been funded, and the project is under bid right now. And once we get the bids back, we'll know their schedule better and that sort of thing. But one big way is phasing the project, that there will be phases that project will go through, so we'll be able to keep the cross streets open at various intersections. So if we're talking 3rd Street, which is a commonly traveled street by the movie theater, or even 2nd Street downtown, those north and south connectors are very important. Lincoln Street by the library and Hotel Mead, for example, we'll be able to know better and communicate better with those businesses as when the projects will be underway. The positive is just about every business along that corridor has a rear access point. Whether it's parking, in the case of Solaris or the library or the Mead, they all have access to the rear or on a side street. Whereas West Grand Avenue was a little bit different, there wasn't as many opportunities for people to get to the front of those businesses or through a rear door. So communication is going to be key, and hoping to inform the public as much as we can, as well as the businesses along that corridor.
Okay. So, and the start date that you're looking at, real early in the construction season?
It'll start as soon as construction. Because it's such a large project, we're going to need the entire construction season to get that done.
So you're looking at October completion date?
Yeah, as we always hope we can get potentially into November if we're lucky for certain paving activities. But yeah, especially for concrete, that surface will be all concrete like it is on the west side of the river. So we don't pour concrete after a certain date, and so we're hopeful that project will get done in a complete calendar year. The last project with the same funding source was the roundabout by the courthouse in 1st Street North a couple of years ago. So the state does the entire surface and contracts for that work, and then we'll provide the underground work. So the storm water and sewer lines will be our crews.
Are we anticipating surprises?
The nice thing about that project, where we actually ran into bedrock when you're closer to the river, both on the west river bank when we did that, or west side of the river when we did the West Grand Avenue, as well as some by the roundabout up in that area near the Triangle project, there were some underground issues. And we're not anticipating, but certainly that can happen.
Well, yeah, it seems almost every time I've covered a major construction project in the city, we found something, because it's buried history.
High Street was an example of that over here, right? There was 2 blocks where we ran into some major issues in High Street. Fortunately, we were expecting that as we carried the project closer to 17th Avenue, and fortunately, it didn't happen. So we were able to close that project up this year. There's some finish work, regrading and site restoration, like filling in behind the sidewalks and that kind of thing. But otherwise, the street surfacing is complete. There are a couple of driveways and sidewalks that didn't get poured, but by and large, we were able to plan for the next phase of bedrock, and there wasn't a lot of it.
If you're just joining us on the Morning Magazine, welcome. It's our monthly visit with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink, and in part 2 we'll have Joe Terry coming on. We're going to be talking about the new garbage bins that will, if you're a city resident, you like myself, you got a letter explaining what's going to be happening, and so we'll have Joe here to talk about that. In terms of the taxes people are going to be paying, what did we end up with?
Well, there were some changes up until last night, so I'm going to get the fresh copy that was shared, so we're speaking from the right numbers. So as some background, I was on the air with both J.R. Seward for his show, as well as during our monthly visit, we talked about the revaluation of property in the city this summer. And that's a mandated process which the city has to go through to ensure that our tax base is equalized, that all property classes, residential, commercial, and industrial property tax classes are all equalized. So there's not a disparity between one class or another where one class is paying disproportionately over another. So when that was completed this summer, we were able to capture about $55 million in new valuation. And so that's when people saw their notices at their home that their tax bills were adjusted, or their assessments were adjusted either upward or downward based upon what the assessor believed the market value was. And most of that information was based upon sales values. So as homes were sold throughout the city, and we've had a kind of a banner a couple of years when it comes to real estate transactions in the city, most of those values were adjusted upward or downward. But in this case, we had the revaluation. So that value gets added into the city's overall value, and in this case, the city's equalized value went from $1 billion, 18 million in 2017 to $1 billion, 52 million in 2018. So what that means is we then spread our budget over the course of that tax base. Then that gives us our tax rate. So if folks are following that iterative process, we don't just set our tax rate on anything. It's based upon the entire valuation of property in the city. And so what does that mean to the city? Well, we had a $12 million tax levy, property tax levy in the city this year, which was about $85,000 more than last year's property tax levy. So about a 7% increase in our tax levy. And what does that translate to in the overall tax rate? When you add in that new value that the city assessor through the revaluation was able to identify in the city, our tax rate actually dropped about 53 cents per thousand. So it's between net new construction, so the total amount of new construction activity in the city, plus the revaluation, the additional value that our property is worth in the city, actually was able to lower our tax rate about 53 cents per thousand.
So that's good. That's good economic news.
It is, right. And so the tax rate in the city went down 4%. That's what the total percentage just at the city portion of the tax rate went down. Now, if your tax, let's say your assessment at your house, Carl, you got a notice from the assessor this summer that your house value stayed the same. It's likely that your tax bill will go down. Now, if your house is worth more, you're probably going to pay more in taxes. And now with the adjustment, though, in the tax rate, that is another downward effect. So when people got an assessment value of, $20,000 more in their assessment, they were probably thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to pay a lot more in taxes. Well, then once you factor in the tax rate, that actually the city's tax rate went down, there may have been a positive adjustment in their mind that their rate might, their tax bill might actually be reduced less than what they were anticipating. So it's very difficult to project what this all means for everybody in the city, but there are a number of scenarios. Your tax bill goes down because your value stayed the same. Your tax bill stayed the same because your value maybe went up a little bit but the tax rate went down, or your tax bill goes up because your home is worth more and you're going to pay based upon the value, the tax bill based upon the value of your home. So there's really kind of three scenarios for folks, and there's probably varieties within that. But and then it also bears repeating that when the city sends out its tax bill, that includes the taxing jurisdictions of the state, the county, the school district, and the technical college. And we had some adjustments last minute, and that's why we had some numbers adjustment last night.
The state tax, that was eliminated, wasn't it?
Right. There is no property tax from the state on your state tax bill or in your local property tax bill anymore. Wood County's tax rate dropped about 2%. The school districts dropped about 1%, but Mid-State's property tax rate went up about 3%. So all those factored in with the state tax credit and the lottery credit and the first dollar credit, the city's overall, when you factor all of the taxing jurisdictions together, dropped about 63 cents per thousand. Okay. So that's the net effect of all of the things we just talked about, which equates to about a 2% decline. Okay. So while the city's tax rate dropped 4%, the overall, when you factor everybody else into the mix, is about a 2% decline.
Okay. Well, people will be happy about that, and I'm based on what the input you have been getting, it sounds like the council has approved some of the amenities that the public was asking about.
That's right.
In terms of why don't we have this? Why aren't we doing this? What about in terms of coming up in the next year, the major projects like the Triangle Project? What affect the Boys and Girls Club Y project? How is that all going to be? I mean, this is going to be a crazy scene. This city's going to be very busy.
It is, and I think I'm not sure how much I even appreciate how much level or what level of construction activity is going to be happening. I mean, we had $15 million in net new construction last year to base our budget off of, and conservatively we planned that for next year. Now, 15 years of net new construction was a record, at least in the last 5 years, when we're counting the amount of new construction activity that's taxable within the city. So Boys and Girls Club is not a taxable entity, and so therefore their construction value won't be reflected in our ability to set our budget next year. But yeah, overall, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of activity. There's a couple of industrial projects that if they come to fruition, that'll have a positive effect ultimately on the amount of construction activity in the city. As you relate to the Triangle, that's certainly a project that will have a positive effect on our overall net new construction numbers. I think when you factor the public, the private, and the kind of the philanthropic activities, we've talked about it. There's over $100 million worth of construction activity that was either planned, already built, or underway, or even in the mix for next year. All the investment at the airport was not taxable, but ultimately was new dollars into our community that in some form exchanged hands through construction activities, and we believe had a positive effect on our economy. So, it's an exciting time. I think sometimes we don't quite give ourselves enough credit for where we are in relationship to where we've been in the last 10, 15 years, and I don't see it stopping. I mean, I really don't. Short of a major economic pullback nationally, we're generally lagging the national recovery, right, both in wages and new construction activity. But as places become more expensive to do business, when you factor the Fox Valley or Madison, where their unemployment rates are so incredibly low, businesses look for places like ours to do business because it's more cost effective, number one. Our utility rates from an electric and a water rate are lower than other places. The ability or access to labor is more prevalent. And from their standpoint, it's probably a little bit less expensive because labor costs are a little bit lower in sort of more rural and central parts of the state. It's really an exciting time, I think, for us to acknowledge. And I'm not going to say it's a turning point. I've said it before. I believe it is a turning point, but I can't say for certain because we can't control what the economy does. We can't control what private business does. But in terms of the indicators, new home construction in the city, new construction as a whole, this is definitely new levels of both of those types of activities.
And you talk to hotel and motel owners, they're busy because of all these construction crews there staying overnight. And if you talk to some of these construction folks, as I have, they're going, boy, this town's really booming, because they have an outside perspective.
That's right.
They only know what they see. Mm-hmm. And they're going, wow, this town's really happening. And sometimes they'll go, why do some of the people around here whine? I mean, in my town, we'd be begging for this.
Yeah, right. We'd be killing for that type of activity or investment for certain. And I think we've got a major project in the aquatic center, the regional pool project that we're hopeful that we'll be able to announce some large gifts here in the coming months and perhaps begin construction in the spring if things all come into place. Now, of course, we need the community to come along. The city has done its part to set aside the amount of money necessary to build a pool that's going to be right-sized and fit the community's needs for a long time. Not just we need a pool and we're going to settle for this small pool and we're going to stick it in a neighborhood and call it cool enough. Well, that frankly isn't serving the community and the city well. And so that's one project that we can certainly continue to talk about. But last night's budget did account for us borrowing the second portion of our commitment, which is a $5 million commitment to the pool project. We decided not to borrow it last year because frankly we didn't have the donations in place to be able to begin construction. So we're again going to propose that in the budget. It was adopted last night to pursue that borrowing.
We have to take our first break. You're listening to the Morning Magazine and our monthly visit with Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink on AM 1320 and streaming live at WFHR.com. We also welcome Jesse and our friends from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media. Back with more right after this.
Good morning and welcome back to the Morning Magazine, presented by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. It's time for part 2. Once again, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and welcome back, everybody, to today's show on AM 1320 and streaming live at WFHR.com. We also, again, welcome our friends from Wisconsin Rapids Community Media, and Jesse is here for that. It's our monthly visit with Mayor Vruwink, and Joe Terry is now in. But before we get to Joe and talking about some things that are going to be happening with the new year, we wanted to address some questions that you did some research on for our listeners, so I'll give you the floor, sir.
Sure. One of the first questions was raised, and I think it's in reporting to it's in light of the reporting on the Portage County decision to pursue a wheel tax in Portage County, and the question was raised: well, when is it time for the city or maybe the Wood County to consider a wheel tax? And I think I would like to really see what the new administration in Madison's approach is related to transportation funding and what the legislature may or may not be able to agree on with the governor come next year in the next budget, in the next biennium, before we take a step to approach the wheel tax. I think the wheel tax is certainly an option for us. I believe that the wheel tax is best served and best distributed at a county level, that in some form us as county residents utilize much more of the road system than just the city residents utilize, or people around the community utilize city roads. So I would certainly not support a city wheel tax before the county makes a good educated and approach to the wheel tax at a county level. It certainly will generate resources for us to pursue and to plow into our road maintenance and road construction budgets, but I don't believe that the most equitable and fair way is at a local level. And if the facts and information tell me otherwise, I might change my position or opinion on that. But I think it's certainly a good option. There's 20-some municipalities around the state now have pursued wheel taxes because their property tax levy and their ability to raise revenue from a property tax standpoint have been limited. So the wheel tax is an alternative method, generally $20 on a automobile, a registration that would come back to the municipality for road maintenance activities. So that was the first question that the caller had left with me. Second question was whether or not there was any progress with the residency ordinance as it was proposed. There was no further progress with that. Actually, as it was indicated, I think at the previous council meeting, that is really a component of negotiations or bargaining with our collective bargaining units, our police and fire unions. So the residency issue didn't take any forward steps one way or the other last night. And then the last question was related to ordinance control, and in the 2019 budget, there was a request from the ordinance control area or community development to add another part-time ordinance control officer. Well, after some discussion both with the finance committee and internally, we decided that that request would still have to go through Human Resources Committee and come through the council process. So while there may have been dollars associated with that request, there will not be any formal action until it goes through that process. As a kind of a general comment as to the ordinance control program that the city has, over the last number of months and really longer term than that, but more recently, the police department has, in coordination with code enforcement, been identifying areas where they're most familiar with their neighborhood or with the beat, so to speak, that they work. And we've had a number of citations, over 3 dozen citations issued to folks that were violating municipal ordinances. And I can't say the nature of exactly every single one of them, but the officers with their judgment identified those areas really as a result of residents coming to us and saying, we have got chronic ordinance violations throughout the city, whether it's garbage and trash accumulating on property, parked vehicles, unlicensed vehicles, unregistered vehicles, you name it. And I think the police department, in coordination with the ordinance control department, has had some great success over the last number of months. In fact, while we were sitting here, I got an email from the police chief with a photo of one of the most challenged properties that he's seen in the city, getting some resolution. There was a dumpster out front. The dumpster was full, I think, in the photo, if not over full, with accumulation of things that had been previously littering and surrounding the property. So it takes time. It's an evolution. I believe now having the police department a bit more engaged and excited about pursuing these ordinance violations throughout the city will achieve a resident objective that residents have voiced to me, and I know to many city council members, that our city needs to look better. It had looked better in certain neighborhoods, and we need to do more to improve the look and really the public safety of these neighborhoods.
Quickly, and one of my pet peeve areas, we're past the election time. How long can people keep decaying campaign signs on their front property?
Like, who cares who you voted for, right? The election's over.
The election's over.
Yeah, or who you supported.
Put that stuff away.
Yeah, well, it's a subject of free speech.
I know that.
So that's the trouble now is through some court rulings, there were some determination of how much control the city has or municipality has over that item. But I think it's a good reminder that if folks have campaign signs out, more of an aesthetic request.
Yes.
Maybe they seek to remove them off their property or off the front yard.
Yeah. Let's get if you want to put something out there, put some holiday stuff.
Yeah, maybe, you're right.
Yeah. Okay. So why don't you introduce Mr. Terry and his role in the city if folks are not familiar with his position?
Well, we've got a special guest with us for the second half of our show. Joe Terry is our Director of Public Works at the city. And Joe, we just got done talking a little bit about the budget, some highlights of some capital projects next year, East Grand Avenue, introduced the fact that our budgets generally are unchanged, and one new program we're instituting next year is automated garbage collection, with a number of objectives, of course. And so we figured we'd talk to listeners about some of the near-term things, the letter that they received, and then maybe walk us through the coming months.
Okay. So what's going to be happening?
Well, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Carl, for the opportunity to be here today. So we are going to be implementing an automated refuse collection program. It'll be very similar to our automated recycling program and how it functions. The notices that went out to the public recently allow them an option to use the standard 96-gallon container, or if they don't have a need for a container that size, they can opt for the smaller 48-gallon unit. During this period of time, it's their option. If at some future point, if someone wishes to change container sizes, there is an administrative fee because we're tracking and inventorying and procuring those units. So changes in the future do have a fee associated. So we do want people, if they want a smaller unit than the standard size, to get a hold of our street department and let us know, and we'll get those delivered accordingly. So the program itself, we plan on kicking off actual collection in May of 2019. We have started, though, and believe it or not, it requires a lot of thought and a lot of work to get the containers, get the ordinance updated, and really think about the services that we're providing. What level do we want to continue to provide? Can we make some improvements? Can we offer some alternatives for folks? So we've been at this for several months, in preparing the policies that will go into the ordinance, and eventually here in the next month or two, adoption of the actual ordinance.
Okay, so. These bins, will they be similar to the recycling bins? Or?
They will. They'll be the same size. Instead of the green in color, they'll be a kind of a charcoal gray color. They'll also have some font lettering on the outside that indicates that it's garbage, and so that you don't get confused what's garbage and what's recycling.
Now, will you have different vehicles picking those up?
We will, although that's one of the benefits of the program is that the vehicle is identical. So if, right now, for example, we have a spare recycling truck in case we have a breakdown. We also have 2 spare garbage trucks in case we have a breakdown. But it's not probable that all 3 might break down at the same time, right? So with the new program, we're going to have 1 extra vehicle, and that's it, because any of the vehicles can perform any of the duties. The recycling truck can pick up garbage. The garbage trucks can pick up recycling. It's just a matter of where we're depositing the materials that we collect. So we'll be able to reduce our fleet, but the truck that's going to be out there is going to look very similar to the one that everybody sees on a daily basis picking up the recyclables.
Now, the folks that used to do the garbage pickup, what's going to happen? Obviously, you just need a driver.
That's
you
correct.
don't need a whole crew running, grabbing garbage cans.
Right. So a few years ago, there was a reduction in staff levels so that during the summer months we were using our summer help LTEs and students, and in the wintertime we were pulling some of our maintenance staff off of their duties to be can collectors. And so, with any program change, we're evaluating the priorities of our department, where we have some shortcomings, where we don't, and we evaluate our staffing levels on a regular basis.
Okay, let me see here. We got a caller coming in, so let's get to our this caller. Good morning. You're on the Morning Magazine.
Good morning. Hey, my name's Ron. I live in the town of Grand Rapids. Subject is the signals at the signal timing, I guess, probably at by Home Depot there, 54 and W. And Mr. Mayor and Carl, I guess maybe the last time you were on the program, I called in and gave you some information on it. That not complaining, but the signal is holding westbound traffic there for quite a while when there's not traffic coming from any other direction. And Mr. Mayor, you said you would look into it a little bit, and I'm wondering if anything has happened on account of.
So actually, the city engineer and I met on that on Monday because I got another complaint last week about the same exact issue, that westbound traffic was being held, and it sounds like they've referred that issue. There's kind of a history of detector loop issues there in terms of where traffic is sitting, where the signal is detecting traffic. That was not included in the timing plan, the retiming plan that we've talked about previously on air. I don't know if Joe has anything to add, but that item was referred to.
How can we address this problem?
Yeah, so the problem was addressed and there was an improvement, but it appears that the problem is returned, right? So it's an ongoing maintenance issue, and we work on those as we get those types of complaints. So it is really important for the listener, for the caller and other listeners, that if you're experiencing some problems with any of the traffic signals, give our engineering department a call, and we will be evaluating those. We do, there are occasions where in this particular location, there should not be any holding up of that through traffic. The only time the light should be green for the non-through traffic is if there is somebody there waiting. Otherwise that should not be turning green. So what's happening is that detector's malfunctioning. It's calling the controller saying that there's a vehicle there when there isn't, and so it's stopping that through traffic when it shouldn't be. So that's a maintenance issue that we need to address.
And oftentimes, I was just going to mention too, oftentimes we find that the pedestrian buttons can also malfunction, calling for that there's actually a pedestrian there. So, we don't know these things unless they're reported or we identify them ourselves on our travel throughout the city.
Okay, and thanks for doing that. But when you said through traffic, Joe, you're meaning 54 traffic, I'm assuming, huh?
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, thanks for looking into that, guys, huh?
Thanks for the call.
Thank you for the call. Yeah, okay. Well, real quick, we're going to take our final break and then be back with more here on the Morning Magazine. Welcome back to the Morning Magazine, our final segment. Wisconsin Rapids Mayor Zach Vruwink has been here for the entire hour. Now, Public Works Director Joe Terry is here. And Joe, if folks have any questions about these new garbage bins, quite honestly, I've seen these all over. I think a Plover I've seen where you got two bins back to back, and I'm kind of, myself, I'm happy about that because hopefully I won't have to worry now about my garbage can on a windy day being blown into the next county. Well, why don't we get to this caller real quick, and then we have some other stuff, including the fun thing about snow removal. Good morning. You're on the Morning Magazine.
Good morning, gentlemen. I was wondering if either one of them had any comments on the possibility that the Wood County Sheriff's Rescue is going to be discontinued and the assets sold off. And I'll listen off there.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually was made aware of that this morning. Somebody had sent me that. It's a county function. It's a county budget priority or lack thereof, it sounds like, that maybe the county board and the passage of their budget and maybe through the sheriff's department request that became the case. And, I don't have a lot of comment other than I know that Sheriff's Rescue has shown up on scene in various functions. I think I'm always a believer that in a regional setting with so many municipalities in a tight area that the county is much better served in serving the public sometimes because they're able to respond on a more regional basis. And so I guess I don't know enough information other than I know it'll leave a gap potentially in emergency response. I would suggest probably more so in the rural areas, given that we've got full-time police and fire departments career departments that can respond to emergencies. So that'd be my only comment, and I don't know exactly where the budget priority. I'm assuming it was a budget priority given the timing of this particular issue.
And that's something we'll be raising with the county board chairman in his next appearance on this program. But might it require that you to get together with your public safety officer, the police chief, the fire chief, and go, okay, how is this going to affect you?
Certainly. What gap might that create? I mean, when you have folks that generally respond to an incident or to a scene, and we don't have that resource there, then that forces us to change our process and protocol. So it'll be interesting to see. I know that they did a lot of variety of training, whether it's water rescue type things. Our departments certainly are trained and capable of doing that work within the city, but I would see that probably more so in the rural areas is going to be a big concern.
Okay. There is the possibility, folks, that we could have our first significant snowstorm of the season come Sunday night through Monday period. And Joe has seen the advisories, the talk on the weather wire and the like. Hey, we're watching this storm. It's a slow mover, and there could be some. And our folks at the Weather Center have told us the same thing. Keep your eyes. Pay attention to the weather, especially travelers, this upcoming weekend. So, given that, what plans do we have for snow removal this year?
Yeah, so we're well equipped to handle the snow here in the city of Wisconsin Rapids. Our salt shed is full. We've got our salt sand mix for our residential areas prepared. We've got our plows ready. Our staff's been out checking the plow routes and identifying any potential issues, getting some markers up. So we are well prepared for any event that's about to hit us.
Okay, yeah. So we're ready.
We're ready.
Are there things people need to be reminded, though? Because it's like, I have with law enforcement, hey, remember, folks, you got to slow down. Mm-hmm. What kind of things should the folks in the city maybe get reacquainted with when it comes to snow removal?
Sure. So I think the primary thing is to realize that we don't remove snow everywhere the same way. So the expressway, our major collectors, hills, places like that, we'll try to generally keep those free from accumulation. But our residential areas and our minor collectors, we need to expect that there's going to be some snow on those streets. We don't salt them the same way. We do have a snow and ice control policy that helps guide those activities, both for safety reasons and for in order to maintain a budget. So our policy states that if there's 4 inches of accumulation, we need to be removing it off of those roads. And that really, that pertains to everything, but primarily the residential. Your highways through our connecting highways through town and major thoroughfares, we certainly do a better job on those.
And this has been suggested by multiple mayors and multiple administrations. Get to a major street for your travel purposes in this type of a situation. That's the best way to maneuver if you got to get to work or whatever.
Right, and just be cautious. If you have an early shift work. Typically our staff starts at 7 a.m. If we have a major snow event, we're calling in early. But otherwise, if the other morning we had a situation where the bridge is iced over.
Yeah.
And and our staff had been in contact with the police department. We were checking things, and it was sudden when that changed, and those bridges became icy. There were a number of accidents. we responded and got equipment out as soon as we possibly could. But it was while we were still evaluating the situation, right? And so that's a challenge. It's been cold enough that we're not likely to have that type of icing situation unless we have some freezing rain now. But this time of the year, it's really important whenever you see a little bit of snow on the road or the road looks a little bit wet, take that extra caution, slow down a little bit, kind of test the waters and be cautious, because it could be your life, your family's life, or just someone you don't know.
Especially on the expressway bridge because it's so high. Mm-hmm. I mean, it can be above freezing on either end and freezing at the peak, and that's where you start seeing people sliding.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I guess I'd like to, and it's too early in the season for it to be an issue, and it generally isn't an issue for most folks until we get into middle of January, February. But that is when we're plowing and the snow banks along the street become high. If people are shoveling their sidewalks, it's best to try to get that snow from your sidewalk onto your yard and not out into the boulevard. And the reason for that is as those piles get higher and higher, the plows as they come by aren't able to wing it over the top. And so as they're driving down the road, that snow kind of stays in the plow until they get to that open driveway, and then that's where it dumps out. And so the more people can take that snow from their sidewalk and blow it back away from the street, the easier they're going to have it later in the season, with those big windrows in their driveway.
And on behalf of the fire department, adopt the fire hydrant in your neighborhood.
Absolutely.
Try and keep that clear because you may need it. We got a caller real quick, so you're on the Morning Magazine.
Yeah, gentlemen, thank you again for answering the questions, and I know it's always a struggle with the budgets and all of that, but I am hoping as you review this new pickup with the new garbage cans that we really monitor the recycling and address large item pickup, be it couches, appliances. There's no way we're going to get a couch in that 90 whatever gallon, and so how I'm able to perhaps get a truck and some strong backs to move these things. But there's multiple landowners here that just simply can't. And I thank you for everything you do, and all of you have a happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
Thank you.
But that's an issue, and I'm thinking, too, with the aging population about how are we going to deal with some of this stuff? How are other communities dealing with it?
Right. So typically there's two ways that large items are handled in most communities. One is they either provide a special service, a pay-for service, where you can pay the municipality and they'll come and get it, or they can, if it's a piece of furniture that's being replaced, oftentimes the company that's delivering the new unit can also take the old one. One of the challenges that we face as we're developing this program is realizing the simple fact that costs for equipment and staff and tipping fees at the landfill go up, and we're limited to what we can do with our budgets. If we're going to spend more on garbage, it means we're spending less somewhere else. It might be somewhere else in public works, it might be somewhere else in police, fire, library, whatever. So as we're developing this program, we're trying to maintain a high level of service that provides good service to 99% of the community members. Large item collection is a challenge, and we will not be able to provide that level of service with our regular collection program. We are evaluating what options there may be, and from listing services that provide that type of service to including for move-outs, including some contact information for the landfill. They'll drop off a roll-off container where you can put all that stuff in, and then when you're done, they'll come pick it up and take it. But there are generally fees associated with that, and that's the unfortunate reality.
I noticed coming into back to the office after my break, after the Good Morning show, everybody's getting ready for Rekindle the Spirit. That includes getting the lights on the expressway bridge.
Yep.
So tonight's the night we flip the switch.
We do. 5:45, I believe the countdown starts, out in front of Local on First. Previously, it's been in front of the Wood Trust Bank and the movie theater, kind of 2nd Street, 2nd and 1st that area. But this year we'll be in front of Local on First. Santa will be there after the parade for photos and all that good stuff. So it'll be our formal kickoff of that event. Also, the Christmas Tree Walk, which is a community effort, gets kicked off again the first 2 weekends in December back at the Historical Museum.
Oh, that's a beautiful event.
It really is. They've had over 1,000 visitors last year with the 2 weekends that they were open. So incredibly successful and very well attended. I just wanted to add one additional item on the recycling caller component. I know we've got some numbers maybe we want to share with the public, but we also want to remind folks that there's the Habitat for Humanity Restore, both in Mauston and in Wausau. I don't know if both of them pick up items that are in good working condition that are used, but generally, building products, light fixtures, plumbing fixtures, that type of thing, those are all elements that Habitat for Humanity will collect for their restore in either Mauston or in Wausau.
Well, as always, gentlemen, I appreciate the time. You all have a happy Thanksgiving holiday.
Yes, thanks to you, Carl, and to our listeners.
And with that, we'll wrap up the Morning Magazine.